with a channel. So just over 1 year with the Canon R6 Mark II. I'm using it as my main camera and as a hybrid shooter, meaning that I use this camera for both taking photos and recording videos. The R6 Mark II has actually been, and still is in my opinion, a great value and a solid option even after a year. So I want to talk about it today. Before we get into talking about my experiences, let me just say that it's a really great time right now in the market, in the world of hybrid cameras. There are so many great options from so many different great brands. We see Panasonic doing their thing with the release of the S5 II and the S5 IIX. We see Nikon with the Z8 and Sony just constantly coming out with their plethora of hybrid cameras that has crazy specs. And in this price range, which is where I kind of think where Canon probably have fallen a bit short, there's not a lot of options that we're seeing coming from Canon, with the R8 being probably their latest release within the last year, which is a really great entry-level full-frame camera at a pretty good price point. So again, there are many pretty good options if we're being totally honest. Whether you're Team Sony, Team Nikon, Team Panasonic, or Team Canon. And I want to kind of zone in and focus a little bit on actually finding and using the gear that works for you. And the R6 Mark II just happens to be that tool for me. So again, I just want to share a little bit about my experiences with the R6 Mark II after using it for just over a year. We're going to take this video now back into the studio to continue. Let's go. Now, quick disclaimer here. This isn't going to be one of those super technical and detailed review videos. I'm going to try my best to keep it as simple as possible, just straight to the surface, and just highlight some of the pros and cons based on my experiences as a hybrid shooter. But mostly I'll be talking a bit more on the video side of things. All right, with that out of the way, I'm going to begin with a spoiler. I really enjoy shooting with the R6 Mark II. For me, it's 100% an awesome upgrade for both photo and video. But of course, it's not without its flaw, which I'll definitely get to later on in the video. So let me just start with some of the things that I like most on the R6 Mark II. Now, I'd say the first thing that really impressed me about the R6 II is the autofocus system. So simply put, it's crazy fast, and when left in auto, it just acquires focus almost instantly and almost always seems to know exactly what my subject is and never loses them unless I tell it to. So there are a bunch of autofocus modes that you can obviously select from, and I believe Canon did bring the same autofocus system from the more expensive Canon R3, which of course means this camera, the R6 II, is going to be able to recognize and focus on humans, cars, animals, birds, you name it, which just makes taking great photos almost a breeze, ensuring I have sharp photos almost all the time. Also, having the ability to capture photos at 14 frames per second mechanically and a staggering 40 frames per second electronically in the R6 Mark II is just like a dream. Now, I'm not a sports or a wildlife photographer, but I really do appreciate that Canon gave us this feature in the R6 II, and it just gives me the opportunity to shoot high action sports if I so needed to. Now, build quality wise, the R6 Mark II is pretty much like its older siblings before it. We get the same magnesium alloy chassis with a reinforced polycarbonate shell that gives a perfect balance between feeling solid and not weighing too much. Canon is actually well known for having that beefy grip on their cameras as well, which is still the same here on the R6 II. It provides a secure hold and feels really well balanced in the hand, even with relatively large lenses. It's also weather sealed as expected, so taking this camera out to shoot in light, rainy scenarios or conditions were really not a worry for me. But the majority of the changes that I want to highlight and talk about are mostly to the physical controls on the R6 Mark II. So firstly, the on and off switch has been moved and now replaced by this photo to video switch. Now honestly, at first it really took some time getting used to, as my muscle memory with prior Canon mirrorless button setup constantly just have me reaching to turn the camera off on the wrong place. But as soon as I got used to it, which really honestly didn't take me that long, I realized the benefit of just having the ability to switch from photo to video with this new switch,
And as a hybrid shooter, I was just really happy with being able to run and gun for both photo and video more easily than I could ever before. And in addition to this, the camera actually keeps the current photo and video settings locked in when you switch back and forth. So it really makes it even more easier to just hit the switch and keep shooting without having to constantly adjust my settings between photo and video. There's also this new little joystick-like controller in the back for selecting focus points while shooting, and I actually like it a lot, surprisingly. I find that my finger doesn't slip off it as easily as it did with the original controller on the R6, which makes using it just a much better experience overall. Now I'm going to jump into talking about some of the more video focused improvements on the R6 Mark II, which is where I think Canon has had problems with in the past. And the first long overdue improvement that most Canon users like myself have been waiting for, and that is having no time limit while recording. So as someone who records sometimes long form videos like a podcast, for example, or sometimes even some of these YouTube videos, that 30-minute limit would just always just cause me to have to stop to restart another 30-minute, which I would probably have to do sometimes 2 to 3 times, depending on how long I want to record for. But with the R6 II, there's no limit, which makes it easy for me to just freely record my long form content with no interruptions, as long as I have enough power and storage, of course. So I'm really happy to finally have this here on the R6 Mark II. But sticking with the video improvements, another huge upgrade in the video department is the ability to record full width 4K 60 frames per second on the R6 Mark II. Now this surely did come as a surprise to most people, because Canon almost always find a way to cripple their camera somehow. And also the fact that the Sony a7 IV, which is pretty much the direct competitor to the R6 II, records 4K 60 with a crop, which is a huge win for Canon in my opinion. Now, I personally didn't find any issues with the general 4K quality on this camera. I really do actually quite like it a lot, as it is oversampled from a 6K sensor, which produces sharp, detailed, and a beautiful image. I also do quite like the fact that I'm able to record 6K ProRes RAW to an external recorder like the Ninja 5. Of course, those file sizes are going to be large, and my computer really struggled with smooth playback, and if I'm being totally honest, it's kind of a overkill for most projects that I do, so I hardly ever do use it. Now, in terms of overheating and run times while recording, when it comes to 4K 24, 4K 30, the R6 II performs really well, and I've never really gotten this camera to overheat on me. However, while recording 4K 60, I did find that the camera will overheat and shuts off after maybe about 40 to 45 minutes at normal room temperature, which is honestly not bad. But for me personally, I record 4K 60 in short bursts where I had absolutely no problems and only got an overheat warning sign once, which happened when I was outdoors recording in some really pretty hot temperatures. So for the most part, the R6 II performed really well where that is concerned. Now, some quick honorable mentions, things that I still do like that I want to just quickly go over. As I mentioned, I did use C-Log 3 quite extensively on the R6 II, and it's so far been pretty decent. I was able to push the colors when grading my footage, getting good dynamic range. It's not the best log curve in my opinion, and it does have the potential of getting noisy when not exposed properly, but I find that overexposing by maybe 1 stop will help to minimize the grain in my footage for the most part. The 8 stops of in-body image stabilization is also really great to have, but I also find that it does have that wobble effect in the corners, which is pretty evident, especially whenever I'm using much wider lenses. But otherwise, I find it's pretty rock solid. I'd say probably one of the best on the market still, especially when combined with one of Canon's RF image stabilized lenses. The battery life is also really good with the new LPE6NH battery. The 3-inch flip LCD screen is bright enough to see, especially outdoors. It has a good EVF. Yeah, I think those are some of the things that I really quite find to be pretty impressive while using the R6 Mark II for the time that I did. All right, so the things that I dislike, the things that I found to be quite annoying on the R6 II. I guess it wouldn't be Canon-like if it didn't have things that just makes you just have to ask, why Canon? Why? The first thing that has me on edge most times with the R6 II is the micro HDMI port. Now, most times I do have my camera pretty much rigged out for video projects, and I have to be always just very careful and wary of the micro HDMI port. Let me just be plain and straight. I hate it, and I don't know why Canon insists on putting micro HDMI ports in their cameras, but I really hope they start using full-size HDMI port for all their new hybrid cameras going forward. All right, second dislike, the flashing tally light on the LCD screen. Now, I personally don't think it's necessary for it to flash. I think just let it be a solid red line to indicate that it's recording. That's it. So Canon, if you're watching this, please, I don't know, maybe a software update could get rid of that, but it's a bit distracting and a bit annoying. So yeah. All right, third dislike, which in all honesty has pretty much nothing to do with the Canon R6 Mark II per se, but still it's probably one of the more major gripes in general, and it's of course the lack of support for autofocus lenses from third-party lens manufacturers. Now, hear me out, I get it. I know there's the option to adapt older existing EF lenses, but in my opinion, mounting a DSLR lens on the end of an adapter isn't quite the same as having modern, more affordable native lenses available. And this is why it's really so hard for me personally to recommend, especially for beginners in general, to pick up a new Canon mirrorless camera like the R6 Mark II. Now, my hope is that Canon will officially open up their RF mount system really soon, because the R6 Mark II is a fantastic hybrid mirrorless camera that is very capable and a very versatile piece of tool. I really do like it a lot, and it's a camera that just impresses me every time I use it. So here are my thoughts. If you're looking to upgrade to the R6 Mark II from something like the original EOS R or the original R6, then I think, yeah, it's 100% worth the upgrade. If you're looking to pick up your first Canon hybrid mirrorless camera and budget is not a problem for you, then yeah, the R6 Mark II is a fantastic option. But if budget is a major part of your decision, then you might want to consider adapting older EF lenses perhaps until native third-party lens support becomes available. But yeah, the Canon R6 Mark II, an exceptional piece of camera and a perfect tool for me. Thanks so much for watching. Hit that like button if you found the video helpful, and also ensure to get subscribed to the channel for more content like this. Anyways, see you guys in my next upload.